heat waves, drought, tornadoes, hurricanes, floods, blizzards, bitter cold. Extreme weather has an incredible impact on people across the globe. On Mount Washington, our scientists planet to improve our understanding of our warming world. Heat wave.
All right, good evening and welcome everyone to Mount Washington Observatory's Science in the Mountains series. My name is Brian Fitzgerald, and joining us this evening to talk all about science-based climate change solutions and strategies, climate leadership, and sharing new climate change stories and voices is Project Drawdown's Managing Director, Elizabeth Bagley. Thanks so much for joining us for tonight's program. If you're not already familiar with us, the Mount Washington Observatory is a nonprofit, member-supported organization with a mission to advance the understanding of the forces that create Earth's weather and climate. And the way that we do that is by maintaining and operating our around-the-clock weather observation and forecast services from the summit of Mount Washington, by conducting research and product testing, and by developing and offering innovative educational programs. If you have questions for tonight's speaker, and if you're joining us through Zoom, please make sure you use the Q&A button. You can find that at the bottom of your Zoom toolbar. You can get your questions in at any time. We'll make sure to leave time at the end of tonight's presentation to get to as many as possible. If you're joining us through the live stream on Facebook, thanks so much for joining that way as well. While we won't be able to respond to your questions in real time through the program, our staff will do our best to certainly follow up after the fact. If you'd like to connect with us through Zoom for an upcoming program, please make sure you register over at mountwashington.org. Alrighty, well, before we kick things off to Elizabeth, who is here with us tonight, I do have a few poll questions that Elizabeth helped me with tonight. So if you're joining on Zoom, you should see some questions popping up onto your screen here. First and foremost, we're always curious where you're joining from, whether it's within the Northeast, Southeast, Midwest, somewhere outside of the country. By all means, let us know where you're joining. And then we have a couple trivia questions tonight from Elizabeth. We'll get to these eventually, but the first question being, which source of greenhouse gas emissions makes up almost a quarter of global emissions? Is it buildings, transportation, or food, agriculture, and land use? And then lastly, you get a 50-50 chance at this one. It's true or false? The estimated allocation of venture capital in 2021 is well aligned with Earth's target investment portfolio. Is that a true or a false statement? All right, I'll give you just a few more seconds here to get some responses in. Looks like a good amount of you have gotten some responses in, so we'll close the poll here in just a few more seconds. In 3, 2, 1. Alrighty, let's go ahead and share some results there. So Northeast overwhelmingly represented tonight, but every corner of the country and in the middle as well, including a couple folks joining from outside the country. So welcome. All right, and then what do we have here for our trivia questions? So most of you, more than half of you, thought that food, agriculture, and land use was the source that makes up at least a quarter or almost a quarter of global emissions. And then lastly, I don't know if we're stumping anybody on this one or not, but was the estimated allocation of venture capital in 2021 well aligned with Earth's target investment portfolio? Most of you, 91%, saying false. That's a false statement. Well, Elizabeth, I don't
There we
know.
go. We've got some thinking happening already.
I'm very curious. I'm very curious. Well, thank you so much for joining us tonight. This has been a talk that I've been looking forward to for a long time. So without further ado, feel free to take it away.
Thanks so much, Brian, and thanks everybody for tuning in. It is such a pleasure to be with you this evening. I am coming to you live and virtually. Hey, Brian, can I get a thumbs up if you can see the slides okay?
It looks great.
Okay, perfect. I'm coming to you from the where I think we have worse weather than all of you at Mount Washington today in Southeast Alaska and Sitka, Alaska. So I might win the Western Award, but such a pleasure. I'm here on Tlingit land that has been stewarded by Alaska Native people since time immemorial, and want to be really grateful for the people who have come before me and made this an incredible place to live. So as Brian said, I am the managing director at Project Drawdown. And today we're going to talk a lot about climate change solutions. So let's dive in. We are in a really interesting place at this moment in time. We are in a race between two futures. One future where civilization is severely damaged by a threat that we've created as humans over time. These are images that unfortunately appear too often in the media, and because the reality is that these types of images are showing up in communities all over the world. The other future that we're in a race with is a future where we actually stop climate change and we build a better future for everyone. And quite honestly, we think at Project Drawdown that we can win this race for the future, that the predetermined doom and gloom fate is not actually predetermined, but a future that we have the power to create. But in order to do that, there's a few things that I'm going to invite all of us to do. One is for us really to think about how do we cut through the noise and the confusion and really lean into science-based solutions and strategies. That's what's so great about the educational work happening at the Mount Washington Observatory. You've got solid science-based solutions and strategies that then also bridge into education and action. So let's focus on that aspect. Let's also focus on avoiding delays and distractions, and rather than that, lean into the bold leadership that we need at this moment in time and move past the doom and despair towards a space of possibility and hope. So that's the future I want to invite all of us to step into. This isn't a Pollyanna future where I just, am making it up in my mind. This is very much a future that at Project Drawdown, we know that we can reach. And how do we know that? Well, we know that because we have an incredible science team that focuses on what are the most impactful solutions to stopping climate change. I'll have a lot of resources for you in this talk that will bridge into future learning for you. Just suffice it to say, we have over 90 solutions that we have that we've reviewed, and we're currently in the process of doing a much thorough, very exciting revamp of that solutions library. So we know by using rigorous science that we can and that we have all the solutions we need in order to stop climate change. We also know that there are incredible leaders all around us in our communities, in businesses, as investors, as philanthropists who are leading on climate change solutions. And we work with folks who are inspiring others to create that future that we want for ourselves and for future generations. So when I think about how Project Drawdown shows up in the world, we show up in three main ways. The first is by advancing science-based solutions and strategies. That's our science team. That's us looking at what are the actual solutions and strategies that we know will reduce or avoid greenhouse gas emissions. These are practices or strategies that we have in hand today, not things that are 10, even 5 years down the road, but things that we know work today, that are scalable, and that we can put into place to create that future we want. We also work on fostering bold climate leadership. The target stakeholders there are philanthropists, impact investors, and corporate leaders. Why those folks? Well, because they have some really unique levers to shift capital, to shift money, to better align with Earth's target portfolio. And all of you who took the poll earlier, you well recognize that right now investments, not only in venture capital, but also philanthropy and government funding, are not well aligned with Earth's target portfolio. That's a bit of a spoiler. We'll get there a little bit later. And the third thing we focus on is promoting new narratives and voices. How do we make sure that we're uplifting the stories of BIPOC leaders across the world who are putting climate solutions into place in their homes, in their communities, to be part of this future that we are all creating? So those are our three interconnected areas for work. And I want to start with definition, which is what is drawdown? We get that question a bit, and that question has a pretty direct answer, which is that drawdown indicates the future point in time, this blue dot on the slide, where the greenhouse gas emission, the greenhouse gas levels, or those heat trapping gases in the atmosphere and the ocean, where they stop climbing and start to steadily decline. Now that moment of drawdown is a critical turning point for life on Earth. And it's a place we need to reach as quickly, as safely, and as equitably as possible. But how in the world do we get there? Well, that's why we're working on those 3 interconnected areas. Now, what we've done is we've thought about the framework for the problem and the solution. And so that's what I'm going to show you right now. Imagine with me, if you will, that this gray rectangle is all of the heat trapping gases that humans have put into the atmosphere. Okay, these are all of the greenhouse gas emissions that are in the atmosphere. One of the great things about science is that we know exactly where those heat trapping gases have come from, right? That are creating that thick blanket around our planet. Now, we see, and this is another one of the trivia questions. We see that about a quarter comes from electricity production. That wasn't one of the options, because about another quarter comes from food, agriculture, and land use. And many of you already knew that. That's often surprising to people, that the ways we use and produce food, and waste food for that matter, contribute greenhouse gases to our atmosphere and ocean. So electricity, food, agriculture, and land use, industry, transportation, buildings, and other energy related emissions. That, everybody, that's the problem, right? Those are where those heat trapping gases are coming from. Now, one of the exciting things is that those are all systems that humans have created, which also means that we have an opportunity as humans to reinvent and improve those systems so that they no longer are the sources of those heat trapping emissions. Now, that's the problem. Thank you to nature, we have sinks, right? We have the sources of those emissions, and we have the sinks. Thanks to nature, we have coastal and ocean sinks and land sinks. But for those of you who did some quick math, that still leaves about 60% of those heat trapping greenhouse gas emissions in the atmosphere and the ocean. And that, everybody, is what is causing our changing climate. So if we take this rainbow diagram, that we lovingly call it the rainbow diagram, and we flip it on its head, that actually helps us understand where the solutions lie. So this first bar is the left-hand side of the rainbow, but now flipped, instead of it being a problem, this becomes a solutions, right? How do we turn off the tap of those sources? So when we think about the opportunities or the solutions to stop climate change, the way we talk about it at Project Drawdown is actually looking through, well, 3 S's. Sources is the first S, and we have different sectors different sectors that we can focus on. So similar to what we just talked about with the sources, we need to stop the emissions from the electricity sector. And in that space, we have clusters of solutions. So one cluster is we need to shift production. We need to shift production away from fossil fuels towards renewables. We also need to enhance efficiency, right? We need things to be much more efficient. Those are the main clusters of things we need to do in order to stop emissions from the electricity sector. With food, we need to address food waste. We need to have more plant-rich diets. We need to shift agricultural practices and protect ecosystem. And you can see that each of those sectors has clusters of solutions nestled within it. So the first area of solutions that we can lean into is reducing sources. We also can support sinks. So we have sources, we have sinks. That's where we can really focus on land, ocean, and engineered sinks. And the third area is society. So sources, sinks, and society, those 3 interconnected areas for action, that's our direction for stopping climate change. So why do I show you this? I show you this because quite often climate change can feel really overwhelming to folks, and we don't really know where to start. And so my invitation to you is to use a framework like this or another framework that you might find and figure out what leverage points you have in your life, in your community, in your business to really start to implement solutions that will work towards stopping climate change. So where can you impact change in this space and in these systems? When you think about why, how we came up with the solutions, we have some really specific criteria that you might be interested in from a science perspective. The solution has to be currently available, like I said, not 5 or 10 years down the road, but actually today, that's financially viable. It has to be able to avoid or reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and it has to have enough data available to model. Here's a little sneak peek. This will be coming in the next year. A whole new solutions library that has a geographic layer, which will be really incredible. So think about being able to hone in on New Hampshire and towns within New Hampshire to identify which climate change solutions are the most impactful in those regions. So we don't have that yet. We're working on that right now. Stay tuned. I think that will be very impactful and exciting for folks all over the world. So we know what solutions we need to put into place. And we know that in order to stop climate change, roughly we need to do a few things, right? We need to cut emissions directly. That's the sources part. We need to turn off the tap, cut the sources. And this is where we've got all of the different sectors beneath those sources, the sectors that we need to be thinking about. We also, though, need to cut emissions indirectly. We need to cut emissions indirectly with like social innovations that reduce emissions. And finally, we need to remove a bit of carbon to close that final gap. So what's interesting here, when you think about the percentages, is that about 96% of those solutions are either direct or indirect cuts to sources of emissions, right? We hear sometimes a lot about carbon removal and storage. In reality, that's about 4% of the target portfolio of what we need to be doing. And I mention that partly because it can be easy to get distracted by that. It can be easy to think that, you know what, carbon removal is going to save us all. And my encouragement to you is to say, actually, we know that right now, some of the most important things for us to do is to directly cut emissions as quickly, safely, and equitably as possible. Sure, carbon removal might be able to scale and come onto the stage and as a real player in the future, but right now, we need all hands on deck to cut emissions. So that's not meant to be depressing, but rather actually really encouraging that rather than putting all of our eggs in the carbon removal basket, there are so many other baskets that we can be working on, not just that one. So my encouragement to really diversify your portfolio. So what does that look like in practice? It looks like some interesting numbers when we think about how different sources of capital are being deployed. And I bring this up because we know that money really has power, and we need money to implement a lot of these solutions. So we worked with some folks to pull data from 2021. So this is a little bit dated now, but about $6 to $8 billion a year went into global philanthropy focused on climate solutions. And what you can see between the two bars is that actually 22% of that $6 to $8 billion a year went to carbon removal. Now, it's not to say that it shouldn't have gone to that, but rather we have other areas also that are not getting as much support, right? When we look at food, agriculture, and land use, for example. Now, when we layer in about $87 billion a year in 2021 from venture capital, this was the interesting multiple choice question we had before, or the true false rather. Wow, venture capitalists are very interested in transportation, specifically electric mobility, right? This is electric cars, electric scooters, electric bikes. The portfolio of the venture capital influx of capital is not super well aligned with the portfolio. Again, it doesn't have to be one-to-one, but across, it's important to recognize that it is not aligned and to find ways that we might move capital into other places, for example, like food, agriculture, and land use that are chronically underfunded. And then when we think about in the US, the Inflation Reduction Act, about $37 billion, and about 66% of that went towards the electricity sector, solutions in the electricity sector. Now, that was very intentional. That is what the Inflation Reduction Act is meant to do, especially in efficiency in that cluster. But how might we, as we think about how our society reimagines these systems, how might we really use science to guide the flows of capital to align with Earth's target portfolio? So just something for you to think about as you think about what you do in your life, either in your home, in your community, or within your workplace. So there's a few things that I'd love to invite you to be thinking about when you're thinking about where you want to start with climate change solutions. One is, and these are all links to our website, I'd encourage you to learn. And just by being here tonight, I'm really grateful that you're learning alongside me. In our solutions library, like I mentioned, we have we have over 90 solutions that are all science-based, focused on solutions that have leverage points that all sorts of different people can take, right? So you might not be a direct decision maker, but maybe you are for some of these. And so I encourage you to check out some of these solution areas. There's also a what you can do section on these pages, so you can learn more and then figure out what you might want to do within your own sphere of influence. We have a table of solutions link that presents all of the solutions in a table that's sortable by impact and sector. So I encourage you to play around with that and figure out, granted, these are global numbers. Our new data will be much more specific at a geographic level, but for now, the global numbers share some interesting information. And here's an example of the what you can do section. This is the reduced food waste page. You can also see the co-benefits. That's something that I'd really encourage you to look into, because climate change solutions are rarely just about reducing or avoiding heat trapping greenhouse gas emissions. They're almost always a yes and, right? Yes, they reduce or avoid emissions and they create jobs. Yes, they avoid emissions and they improve human health and well-being. And sometimes, as someone who lives in Alaska, grew up in Wisconsin, and spends a lot of time talking to people about climate change, talking about reducing or avoiding emissions right out of the gate is not always the hook that's going to get people to lean in and care, right? What's often going to be the hook to get people to lean in and care are things like job creation or saving money or any number of other co-benefits. So I encourage you to really think about what are some of the co-benefits that these solutions have that might really improve people's lives and help us create that future that we want for ourselves and for future generations. Another area you might be interested in is our Climate Solutions 101. And Brian and I had talked about, there's not really a one-stop shop for K-12 education around climate change. There's a number of different websites. Climate Generation has some great resources. So does the Clean Network out of NOAA. And we realized that in 2021 and created Climate Solutions 101. This video series actually came out of COVID, in that when everyone went virtual, and including universities and all schools, we were getting a lot of requests for giving talks to classes. And we were like, oh, we cannot be in every classroom around the world. But what we learned was that faculty members were really hungry for content about solutions, because they felt confident to teach about the problems, but not the solutions. And their students were really disappointed. They were letting their students down. So I'd encourage anyone who works in an educational capacity to really make sure that you are providing solutions in addition to the problems, right? It's really doing a disservice to folks we're interacting with if we just drop a bunch of problems on their lap and don't support them in thinking about solutions and what they can do. So that's where Climate Solutions 101 comes in. Climate Solutions 101 is a 6-unit video series where we talk about the science behind the solutions, not just the science behind the problems. Every video chapter has a TED style lecture where we talk about that science. We also interview some of these incredible scientists from around the world who are deep experts in their own areas of expertise. And we have a bunch of downloadable graphics. So if you're looking to present some of this content, please use these slides. They're here for you, and we'd love for you to use them. Our most recent video series is actually called the Drawdown Roadmap. So we have Climate Solutions 101. This is kind of like the 201, where we lay out the roadmap for climate solutions. And it really, it's a science-based strategy for accelerating climate solutions. And it points to which actions governments, businesses, investors, and community organizations can take to really make the most of our efforts to stop climate change. There are 5 videos that are part of the roadmap series, as well as more images for you to download. So you can download any images and put them into slide decks that you might be interested in looking at. Now, all of that is the science. And if you remember, we do 3 main things at Project Drawdown. We do science, we work with stakeholders, and we do storytelling. And we really want to make sure we bring those stories to life. And we have loads of stories on our YouTube page. I invite you to check out our YouTube page if you want to learn more about some of the science as well as the stories. And to really dive into the stories, our Drawdowns Neighborhood program is absolutely incredible. It's a climate solutions short documentary series where we pass the mic to climate heroes who often go unheard. So we've now been to a number of communities across the US. We work with those local communities to identify climate heroes whose voices haven't been heard but are really important. These folks are not climate scientists, but they are people who are doing absolutely incredible work in their communities. You can sort the collection by solution sector or by city. We haven't done any cities in New Hampshire yet. The closest we've come is Connecticut. You probably don't want to hear that. You probably don't want to be associated with Connecticut, but we've done Connecticut, New York, and New Jersey as our tri-state series that came out last year. The latest series that's coming out in a couple of weeks is actually our San Francisco Bay Area series. And what's so incredible about these stories is that these are real people doing really, really important things without any kind of fanfare. And one of the takeaways we want people to have is that all of us can step into this space, and every one of our jobs can and should be a climate job. Here's an example of Clara Kitongo from Pittsburgh and the really inspiring work that Clara does. Now, each of these stories, not just a video, it actually has discussion questions. You can, it has resources to learn more as well as take action. So we really want these to be used as a springboard into action in your life. So I encourage you to check out the Drawdown's Neighborhood video series. All right, so that's a lot of learning. So we have a lot of things at Project Drawdown that can support learning about climate solutions. Again, science-based always. And we also encourage you to do things. Now, what does that look like? Well, we have the Climate Solutions at Work Guide, which is a how-to guide for employees looking to make every job a climate job. We have a number of Drawdown, they're called the Job Function Action Guides that are practical and shareable resources that highlight specific high-impact climate actions that employees in common corporate professions can take at work. Each guide includes why your role and skills are needed in addressing climate change, tangible actions you can take to make your job a climate job, and key considerations and resources to help you get started. Each guide has a really simple climate action checklist, which is something you can print out and put right at your desk to keep you motivated and organized as you implement climate actions at work. So here is an example of one of the, oops, you know what? I don't have an example. Sorry about that, folks. But if you go to the website, there are examples for if you are in procurement, if you are in product design, how might you look at your job through the lens of climate and climate action? So you can learn you can do, and we'd love it if you would share. If you want to put the brakes on climate change, but you're not sure where to start, I encourage you to check out our new Discover page that has really customizable access to all of our resources to help guide the next steps on your climate solutions journey. And I want to reiterate the importance of sharing information about the co-benefits of climate solutions. We have a climate poverty report that provides really concrete evidence on how climate solutions can also be win-win opportunities for meeting development and human well-being needs, all while boosting prosperity for rural communities, specifically in sub-Saharan Africa and Southeast Asia. So we also have reports on black carbon and clean cooking, and those are just a couple of the ways that we're really thinking about how are climate solutions more than just about reducing or avoiding heat trapping gases, but also about improving health and well-being, about reducing poverty, about creating jobs, all of these co-benefits that are so critical to creating that future that we want to live in. So what's the next step on your climate solutions journey? We invite you to learn, to do, to share, and to join us, and really responding to this moment in time with the same level of expansiveness that the problem offers to us. We know how to get there. We know how to stop climate change, but in order to get there, we need everyone. We, as the people who are lucky enough to be alive at this moment in time, have an opening to show up as problem solvers and change agents and really contribute in significant ways, even when we feel overwhelmed, when we feel small. And we know that this transition is on our doorstep, and we have a choice to make about what shape that transformation is going to take. So my encouragement to you today is to lead with science-based climate solutions and really create that future that we want to live in. Thanks so much, everybody.
Hey, thanks, Elizabeth. I love that. Generating a lot of questions on my end of things, but I'm curious from the folks who are joining us here live right now on Zoom, if you have a question, by all means, feel free, use the Q&A button. Again, you can find that at the bottom of your toolbar there. I already generated a bunch. I'm going to try not to hog this to the best of my ability here, but I just wanted to kick things off. Elizabeth, I'm really curious, how did you get involved with Project Drawdown? Because it seems like you have an interesting career arc. I'm sure you didn't just land here by mistake, but I mean, how did you get involved with this organization?
Oh, thanks so much for asking, Brian. You know, that's a story that I like to tell because it's very windy. And I think it's, you know, the 17, 18, 19-year-old me would not have understood, well, and I wanted to be a doctor, right? A medical doctor, would not have thought that winding meant success, or that winding would get me to a place where I would love what I do. I won't go too far back in time to like growing up on a sheep farm in Wisconsin, but that did happen. And then I went to graduate school after I taught high school science through Teach for America for a couple of years in South Louisiana, and really realized that I love teaching. I was a biology major in undergrad, and like I said, I thought I wanted to be a medical doctor, and then realized I really didn't actually. And the question that I asked myself, and when folks ask me what they should do in the climate space or just in life in general, is I ask them, what kinds of problems do you want to solve? Because that's what a job is, right? Like a job is solving problems. What do you want to look at in your email inbox every day when you wake up? Like what are the problems that you're being asked to solve? And so for me, I realized that I didn't, you know, I really did want to solve problems related to kind of the intersection between people and the environment. So after graduate school, I worked for the Walt Disney Company as a fellow actually during graduate school, and that gave me a really interesting taste for collaboration, because in graduate school, at least my experience was much more, much less collaborative from a, you know, all of us were thinking about things in a particular way. We weren't working with artists and designers and like really creative folks in different ways. And I loved that at the Walt Disney Company. And after my postdoc, actually worked for Leapfrog designing video games and DVDs. And that was just such a great opportunity to think about how can people with vastly different backgrounds come together and create something very cool and much bigger than than any individual one of us. So, oh yeah, go ahead. Sorry. Keep
Well, I was
talking.
gonna say that, I mean, leading me into my other thought and curiosity I had, because I mean, I just know and have learned about a little bit of some of the folks who are on your team, but just like, yeah, what are some of the backgrounds and some of the folks that support your organization? Because I mean, certainly it's nice that you have the combination of the communication, the education, certainly the science background, but you all do a lot of different things, and also obviously can't be expert in all these topics, but you do have a sort of a variety of folks on board, right?
We do, yeah. And I after Leapfrog, I worked at the California Academy of Sciences. I was a director of sustainability there. And sustainability, as folks know, is a really wide field. And I got to a point where I said, you know what? I actually just want to work on climate. And even just working on climate is very big, but at least it's a little more targeted. So working at Project Drawdown has been just a great space for me. As the managing director, I support all of the teams and really make sure I can move things out of their way. It's the first job I've had where I'm not leading a program, but rather really supporting everybody else in doing that. So in terms of, you know, how are we experts in different areas? I think that's really been the important aspect of finding great people and finding the types of projects and roles for people that really bring them alive. That's actually been a fun part for me. I think it goes back to my teaching days where I think about how do we really unlock and unleash people's potential. And I think that's what we try to do at Project Drawdown, to really make sure that all of the people working on the team are working on the things that they are really passionate about, that they are expert in. And when we're not, we find people who are expert in it to support us. So I think that got to most
Yeah.
of the
Oh, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. Because I mean, I looked through the glossary, all the solutions, and I'm like, well, certainly at a certain point, you're handing these things off, obviously, to like whoever the the experts on the ground are that implement these things and whatever. But we have a couple nice comments and questions in the chat. I don't know if perhaps you've seen the first one, but Anonymous was just saying, hey, not a question, but a comment, a much more effective approach, not the scolding tone we usually hear and tied to science. Kudos. I mean, I'm sure you think a lot about how you approach this conversation. You've always kind of referenced some of this a little bit, trying obviously to get past the doom and gloom. We think a lot of educators certainly think about that, but I mean, yeah, I mean, how do you typically approach a lot of the talks and programs and presentations that you all typically do?
Well, thanks for the comment. That's very kind, and I appreciate that. You know, I don't like to be scolded, and I don't think anybody else wants to be scolded, and we know that it doesn't really work, right? Like it might work, and there's so much great research, and this is where I think my background in educational psychology and environmental science is really helpful, because there's just a ton of psychological research that fear-based messaging is a short acting drug in a sense, right? Like it will help us sprint, it will help us do something kind of in that moment. But for a problem like solving climate change, which is a marathon, right? That type of fast acting fear doesn't actually persist, right? We see these little fits and starts, but not that consistent, like we got to get this done and it's going to take a while kind of persistence. So that's one of the things I think about. I also think about how do we meet people where they're at? You know, we've got folks with all sorts of different lived experiences in the world, and making space for people to find their next step on their climate solutions journey and to invite them in instead of tell them exactly what to do, right? Like I grew up in the age of, reduce, reuse, recycle. Like those are the three things you do, and then you're like a good person, right? None of that. And so it's solving climate change isn't as easy as a checklist, right? It's really, I do want to invite people to be more thoughtful about how we can reinvent systems and be part of that reinvention of the ways we live and work on this planet. And not everybody's at a place where they're ready to do that right now, and they really do just want the like top 10 things to do to save the earth. But I'd love to continue to move people towards that, that space of being able to find some real meaningful lasting change. And I don't think the fear, scolding doesn't really get you there. I also will say I just wrote a piece on our website called How to Talk to Kids About Climate Change. Fun fact, it was picked up by CBS News, and on the 4th of July, I had sitting right here a little CBS News conversation, basically just like this, Brian, where I was talking on national TV about how to talk to kids about climate change, which, by the way, well done CBS for actually wanting to have that spot, and then it got picked up by a bunch of affiliates. And so the main thing I led with there was listening. And I think that's something that doesn't happen enough, especially in the climate space, right? Like listening to how people are feeling. There's a lot of feelings that come up with climate change, and listening and finding space for empathy, and then, meeting people where they're at and figuring out what's next. Does someone just need to complain or just to talk about how they're feeling? Does someone want a suggestion on what might be a great next step? Like, where are people at? And I don't think scolding really gets us anywhere. So if anybody came looking for scolding, I'm sorry if I let you down, but that wasn't what I was, I didn't do that tonight. So
Yeah, well, absolutely. I mean, and also, I mean, you kind of referenced it before, but part of the reason why through our educational programs as well, I mean, we get to a certain place where obviously underlying science, all of those things, we're a nonpartisan organization that is science-based, and we get to a place where, okay, well, what do we do about it? And we're certainly not expert in that necessarily. We can contribute to different pieces, but it's so, not to plug you more than we already need to, but it's so easy to go to a full gallery of solutions to say, well, look, we're not pointing to any one thing. There may be some topics or solutions or sectors or sources or sinks or whatever that you can go explore, and there's a little bit of freedom of choice, and also, again, meeting people where they're sort of at with some of these materials. So certainly that's where my personal appreciation as an educator comes in.
hey, Brian, yeah,
yeah.
thanks for that. And I think you asked me something that I just totally ignored, not on purpose, but because I was talking too much, which is, did you ask about our funding? Was that a question, or like where do
No,
we?
but I think that might be a little bit of ESP. I wasn't sure if I
Oh,
was
that's
going to
so
ask you
funny.
that
And I
one, but
think,
I am curious.
we have an anonymous person who mentioned a list of organizations that they can contribute to financially that have an effective use of funds, perhaps are sorted by sector type. I love that. We are a 501c3 nonprofit, like I assume you are as well, right? The Mount Washington Observatory. Our funding comes from a whole bunch of different places. We have funding from foundations, from private individuals, from corporations, very little government funding. We just have like a subcontract right now from the National Science Foundation. And there are so many great groups in this space. We just started something for those of you who are interested. It's called the Drawdown Capital Coalition. And we started it because of that slide of the misalignment between the Earth's target portfolio and where folks are driving capital. And we just did last week, actually, a 3-series overview on very specific levers and strategies to stopping tropical deforestation. So one of the things I didn't talk about today, which I can mention briefly, is when we think about the solutions, there's something called the time value of carbon, right? The earlier we stop some of those solutions, the better, because then we never have to deal with the greenhouse gases in the atmosphere and ocean, right? So those emergency brake solutions related to the time value of carbon are things like stopping tropical deforestation. If we don't cut down the forest, then that carbon never goes into the atmosphere, right? Reducing food waste, stopping methane leaks. We don't ever need that methane to leave, right? Massive energy efficiency gains, right? Those are some things that we know we want to pull those emergency brakes now, and that helps us prioritize what to be thinking about, right? So when you think about what are organizations that you can contribute to, that I would start by thinking about what are some of the emergency brake solutions. And maybe, Brian, I can share with you, our executive director gave a great TED Talk. John Foley gave a great TED Talk last year that really goes into detail about the time value of carbon and the emergency brakes. That might be helpful for folks. So for example, with the Drawdown Capital Coalition, we partnered with a really incredible group called Climate Lead and the Forest People Climate Collaborative, where they have done a lot of research and due diligence around what are the three strategies for stopping tropical deforestation. We're doing something really similar to that, focus on food waste, and our partner there is called a ReFed. ReFed's an incredible food waste reduction organization. So that's not a perfect answer to the question, but my answer to how do you figure out where to drive capital is really to think about what climate solutions are most important to you and who is doing something in that space to implement solutions, right? So ReFed around food waste, we've got the Forest People Climate folks who are focusing on stopping tropical deforestation. So there's all sorts of really incredible groups. We don't yet have like a vetted list. Honestly, it's a bit political, right? Because then are you playing favorites? And so that's just something that we've had to like think about.
Yeah. Yeah, right. That's an interesting point in there. And actually, I think I was able to add in the Q&A chat there, was able to add the link to the TED Talk. If folks registered, I think we were
yeah, well done.
Link in there. So by all means, that would be great. And I mean, so on that, like, yeah, political note, I mean, you mentioned, obviously, I mean, you work at times with political leaders probably looking for information, and Ken writes a question here who's asking, do you work with government leaders to encourage them to take a science-based approach to climate change and overcome the political resistance that both they labor under and maybe even create? I mean, so what does that work, I guess, sort of like generally look like? And maybe is there like a specific example maybe you can give without like totally outing people?
I can say that's not really our sweet spot in that we work the stakeholders we work primarily with are philanthropists, impact investors, and corporate leaders. We do have a policy advisor based in DC, and he's doing incredible work, mostly interestingly at the international level. So he is working on steering conversations specifically around the Conference of Parties. So you might have heard of COP, like COP29 that's coming up, right? Really inserting conversations about, for example, these emergency brake solutions. Another one I didn't mention is black carbon, right? Black carbon is, if we can solve black carbon, we also solve some human health issues and some poverty issues. And like there's a triple win there with black carbon. So really helping to bring science-based solutions and strategies into those international gatherings so that policy can be crafted based on that science. We aren't necessarily working with kind of one-off legislators or, electeds. There are other groups who are doing that, and they're doing a great job of that. And we do know that our framework is being used by those folks. We just haven't, that hasn't been a main focus of our team. I should say our team is, we have 16 full-time people and 3 part-time people. So it's not, we get I think a nice compliment sometimes that we punch above our weight. I don't really want to punch anyone, but for a small group, we get quite a bit done.
All right. Well, fewer employees than Mount Washington Observatory. Well done. That's really exciting. Yeah, I mean, I find that sort of surprising, I guess. I assume, like Ken, yeah, politicians must just be, calling you, or, I mean, I guess maybe in terms of keeping a little bit nonpartisan, maybe there isn't necessarily a lot of outreach on your part, but that I definitely guess I find that surprising. So any philanthropists out there, I guess if you're looking for insights, you should reach out to Elizabeth and her team.
You got it. Yeah. Philanthropists, impact investors, corporate folks, and, government folks, we'd love for them to use our content. We don't yet have a direct link. What would be really interesting, and someone could kind of build this, would be looking at each of our solutions. What are some policies that help pave the way for implementing those solutions, right? So if you think about food waste, there are all sorts of policies at different levels that municipalities or states or countries could implement that would help pave the way to make those solutions much easier. But that's just not, that's kind of beyond the scope of what we're able to do at the moment. But I think that would be really helpful. Actually, I have a former colleague from another organization who is the mayor of a small town in California, and she sent me a copy of her Drawdown book that every page had a little sticky note on it that she had annotated for the incoming mayor of her town to tell them what kinds of policies would move that solution forward. And I said, oh my gosh, I need a copy of that annotated book. So,
Well,
yeah.
it sounds a little bit like what you're working on, or what you're referencing, really trying to, from these very broad solutions, help people navigate through sort of this revamping materials to look and focus in a little bit more regionally and locally for solutions as well, right?
You got it. To take, instead of just a global approach, which is what the solutions up till this point, kind of tell a global story. It's like, how can we make the solutions much more local and much more actionable?
Yeah. Oh, that's fascinating. I'm really looking forward to that. I'm sure I'll be following closely to see when that comes out.
Well, Brian, I will put a plug in if folks want to follow along. We do have a newsletter, so it's on our website under, I think, About. Would really welcome folks to sign up for our newsletter, and that's where folks can will make some big announcements when things go live.
Excellent. Well, thanks, Elizabeth. I think maybe just time for one more question here. I mean, just again, I'm just sort of fascinated in your day to day and what your work sort of looks like, and I think partly just like, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure challenges at times. I'm curious, like what those look like, what like the difficulties in some of your work really looks like. I can guess a few, but I'm also really curious about what sort of, what are the joys and the things that kind of keeps you sort of driving forward.
Oh, I love that. I think one of the challenges we've kind of touched on a little bit, which is that there's a lot to be done, and the challenge can be focusing and doing something really well instead of, it's like the inch deep, mile wide versus the inch wide, mile deep, right? And so I think what we've realized as an organization that's now been around for a decade is really focusing more. That's why we've got science, stakeholders, and storytelling. That's what we do, right? We don't do political advocacy. We don't, right? Other people do. We're not saying it's not important. We're saying that the team that we have right now, our specialty, our expertise lies in science, stakeholder engagement, and those specific stakeholders, and storytelling. And so that can be hard sometimes when I'm like, oh, shoot, it would be really interesting to engage with, elected officials at all different levels. What we can do is we can engage with the folks who are engaging with them, right? And for example, we, with our corporate partners, for example, we're not necessarily one-to-one working with a company, but rather working with groups that already convene corporate leaders. And we're speaking there, or we're leading workshops, and we're bringing the science to the places where people are already showing up. Cool. So just thinking about that strategy is really important. And sometimes it can be hard to like trim the branches of the tree that's been growing over the years.
I'm sure, because here I am thinking like all the different solutions you mentioned, the 90 plus, any one of those they're all so intriguing and all those things, but I'm not going to ask you specifically to be expert on any one of those topics, but I'm also still fascinated by the strategies and the way that you approach all this.
And the joy. I mean, we get such kind words. We also have done some really lovely collaborations with folks. So one very small collaboration, I'll put a plug in for a tabletop board game called Daybreak. And that was co-created by Matt Leacock. He created the board game Pandemic that you might have heard of before if you're a gamer, and with Matteo Menepace. And they actually, I reached out to them when I found out they were creating a board game about climate change. I said, hey, do you want a beta tester? Do you want someone to play test? And so for a winter, which in Alaska it was nice to have something to do in the darkness of winter, I play tested the game, and then which was so fun to be part of, like, how do we make climate change and the complexities and nuances of climate change solutions something that people can really talk about over a game table and get some feedback from with the gameplay. And then we helped write some of the text, and it just won the biggest board game award in the world this week in Germany, which is pretty incredible. So David, and so that to me, so actually there's a quote, and the reason what I was going to say, what brings me joy, one of the people on Board Game Geek mentioned, like or actually was on a famous tabletop gamer did a playthrough of the game, and one of the comments was like, I would have never picked up this game because I'm not interested in the topic, but now I am. And I was like, yes, like we're getting right, like
Yeah,
yes.
you nailed it.
Yeah,
I mean, you had a challenge, I think, laid out in front of you, and it seems like you rose up to meet it. That sounds like a good passion project because obviously your gaming background,
yeah.
your
Yeah,
experience.
that I know that I just told you about, like trimming, not doing too many random. That was definitely a side thing, but so worth it. And
Well, you answered it. What keeps you driving forward? You need to have those passion projects. That's for sure. I know it. Well,
yeah,
Elizabeth, I'm so grateful for you sharing your expertise, sharing about the work of Project Drawdown. I really appreciate that. I appreciate everyone who's taken the time to join us as well. Elizabeth, I know you have the rest of your day ahead of you in Alaska. Here, we're getting to the end of our day here. But for everyone who joined tonight, if you enjoyed tonight's free program, we do strongly encourage you to make a donation over to mountwashington.org. Hit the donate button in the upper right-hand corner. Also, if you have thoughts about tonight's program, suggestions for future ones, we'll have a Google Form survey that'll show up in your Zoom window following the program, and also in a thank you email as well. And then finally, don't forget to join us for our next 2 Science in the Mountains programs. August 13th, Mount Washington Observatory's Summit Intern Research Team will present their findings on active research projects. And then on Tuesday, September 24th, astronomer William Grundy from Lowell Observatory in Arizona will join us to discuss extraterrestrial weather and climate. So don't forget to sign up for those programs and watch any of the previous ones you might have missed, all over at mountwashington.org. And otherwise, have a wonderful, night for most of us. Elizabeth, enjoy the rest of your day, and thank you again.
thanks so much for having me. Take care.
Yeah, take care. Bye-bye.